there's one fire. So you run over to meditation somewhere where there's just other human bodies, you get some feeling of being slightly warmer. And that went on for 2 or 3 months like that before we got heat in. And that was tough, but in a way it was beautiful because there was no choice. So the mind, with that, you realize your mind has to stay within that. If you start thinking of warmth, you're going to suffer so much if you just stop thinking about it. So, in a way, it was a wonderful gift. It was a gift of seeing how, if you keep your mind steady, external suffering doesn't have to turn into internal suffering. And if you don't control your mind, suffering will just start happening automatically, wherever you go. Yeah. Because then when things got more comfortable, the mind had a little more room, you could start complaining, criticizing, finding fault with other people, thinking the routines weren't right, people didn't work hard enough, there's too much work to do. Yeah. The talks are too long, there's not enough teaching. There's too many people here, there's not enough people here. The food isn't right, one way or another. Your mind could start doing this and complaining about other people. So after a while, we began to see that the real restraint was much more voluntary and to do with training the mind, not so much in terms of the senses, although that's always important, but in terms of the mind itself. Training the mind, not in terms of how the mind flows out into the sense world, which is certainly an aspect of restraint, but how the mind flows out into its own creations, its imaginations, its fantasies, its judgments, its opinions, of which we are all, I'm sure, liberally endowed. Yeah. This is where cooperation becomes really, really crucial. I think for me, one of the turning points was, I think, my second Vasara Amaravati, and it was a very confusing time. There were so many people from different countries, not everybody even spoke English, people at different stages. Some people were just wanderers who came in slightly deranged, people with psychotic problems, and it was very confusing, chaotic. And I decided that for the Rains retreat, I would take up the resolution of not complaining. Not even complaining in my mind. I mean, I could stop the speech, but actually to get into the mind and stop the complaining thought as it came up. Just that moment when something irritating, disappointing happens, something you don't approve of, somebody's misbehaving, something's too long, too short, too hot, too cold, not fair, not the way I do it. Just get to that point and stop. And I made that adikalyanam, that resolution. And it was really transformative because I began to really sense how irritating life is when you're living in a group. How irritating it can be, how irritating the mind can find it. Because there's absolutely nobody who thinks like I do in exactly the same way. We're all very different. Yeah. I think, why is he doing it so slowly? Why doesn't she do that? Why does he have to keep saying that? Why is she always late? Why don't people understand this? Why is the tea so terrible? Yeah. And I just get to that point where the mind was about to say that, and this resolution would come up, you can't complain. You just have to experience that dukkha, the suffering, and relax. And this makes the mind very strong, but also compassionate when you recognize this is happening for everybody. Everybody wants to get things their way, and nobody can do it. Isn't that the same for you? You like things to go your way? Does it happen? Happens for a little while, then something goes wrong, doesn't it? You think, if only. Get to that point. Really get the sense of that. Nothing ever goes wrong. Nothing really ever goes wrong, apart from your mind loses its agility and its ability to restrain its desires and let go. That's what goes wrong. That's the only thing that goes wrong. Everything else is just going in accordance with nature. When you see that point, then your practice gets very simple, and it's also all day long. Meditating, not meditating, alone with people, at work, eating, whatever you're doing, that point where the mind starts to want, suffer, don't see it, that's the point. And this is what's so thoroughly trained in monasteries, because nothing goes one's way. There's often things about time. Things don't happen in accordance with the clock. They say we'll be here at 10, 10:15. But you can never know whether it's going to be 10 o'clock or 10:15. You just have to realize there'll probably be waiting involved. Nothing happens in accordance with time. Nothing is that predictable. You're in a situation which seems very predictable. You've got the vinaya, the training, the routines. Yet actually it's always shifting. There's always new people coming, different things happening, and you have to stay on the ball. Is the Ajahn going to give a talk tonight? Don't know. What's for the meal today? Don't know. Sometimes will it turn up? Don't know. And learning to widen one's mind, to include all that, is very much the way to peace, to harmony. You begin to see and pinpoint this quality of craving, which at first seems so innocuous and so harmless and so sensible. It's to do with what they call bhava tanha, the desire to become, the desire to arrive somewhere, the desire to get things done, the desire to feel complete, the desire for the future. And the future is a complete creation of the mind. It's one of the papanchas, or the proliferations of the mind. None of us have any future whatsoever. You may think I'm being poetic here, but now is the present. Now there is no future. We don't have a future. We have the present, and the present keeps changing. What manifests in it keeps changing in accordance with the conditions and the energies, the causes, the karma that's happening. It keeps changing. So yeah, in a few minutes' time this will be different. But we don't have a future. We have a present that keeps changing. Yet most people, most of the time, imagine the future. They imagine, and they move towards the future. The mind is continually leaning towards the future. Towards next year. Towards when I retire. Towards when I have the baby. Towards when I finally get enough money. And the future keeps moving ahead of us all the time. As long as you believe in it, it keeps moving out of your reach. You never arrive there. And then you're dead. Where was the future then? So to restrain oneself in the future, because you realize the more that we follow that energy, the less and less we're living balanced in the present, the more we're creating the conditions that support suffering. The future, when you contemplate it, is either desire or anxiety. What will I be? What should I talk about? What should I do? Will it be okay? Is it right? Is it not right? Or when I get there, it'll be fine. When I have that, it'll be good. It's either desire or anxiety. And you don't want the future. The future is desire and anxiety. And it's a subtle form of mental creation that the world in general believes in, is pushing us towards. Why it's so important to cut it. And generally we cut it with contemplation of death, maranusati. Yeah. And it's one of the reflections the Buddha said, this one you can't do too often. And he said 3 times a day, that's not, you know. Every time I eat food, no, he says, one monk said, every time I breathe in, I contemplate death. Every time I breathe out, I contemplate death. He said, that's about the measure. If you can't do it that often, you should at least do it every day. So at the end of the day, you think, if I die tonight, look at what do I take with me? What is the state of my heart? Is it bearing grudges? Is it craving? Is it worried? What's it doing? It's time to finish it now. It's time to finish it now, because for countless births, this desire, this becoming, has dragged us through birth after birth after birth after birth, struggling, never accomplishing things, fighting, crying, weeping, wailing, on and on. That's what it's dragged us through that. Now is the time to stop it, to cut it off. Yeah. And monasteries are great places for that, for cutting off the future. Training is that. But for lay people, really just maranusati. Remember it. Is there anything here I regret that I'd like to ask forgiveness for? Is there anything here that I need to put aside? Anything here I'd like to focus on as if this is my last moment? What would I carry? Gratitude, purity, relinquishment. What's that? You know, this is a really important daily meditation. It takes 10 minutes. Half an hour, but 10 minutes will do it. Yeah. So if you never have time to meditate, you should at least do this. Maranusati. The past. What is the past? Nostalgia and regret. The good old days. Yeah. Regret. Finishing the past. Restraining oneself from that. Yeah. These are the great proliferations of the mind. Do you ever have a mind that's continually going back to something that happened in the past? It's like you're in a tribunal. I never did this. They always did that. Why should I have done that? She did that to me 15 years ago. You know, the tribunal mind. Do you ever want to get out of the courthouse? Finish it. You know? The other great proliferations that we need to be careful around are self and others. Praise and all the praise and blame that goes on with that. Who am I? What am I? How am I? What do people think of me? What was I? What was I in part of my past life? What will I be in my future life? Having done this, what will I be? Why am I? Am I better than? Am I worse than? Am I the same as? Yeah? This kind of continual agitation around building up this sense of self. Self is purely a proliferation. When you look into it, what's there? Agitation, need, proliferation. And the Buddha said, when you contemplate this experience we call the self-view, one who rightly attends to it, who attends to it clearly, recognizes this is suffering. This is where it originates. This is where it stops. This is the path. So just bringing back how much of yourself is contributing to suffering, comparing yourself with others, so on. And, you know, in true practice, our standards are always to come out of that comparison. This is why in Sangha life you have the whole seniority piece, seniority junior. It may sound like it seems very comparative, but the point of it is to remove any sense of who's better, because it's just who's been here longer. Doesn't mean just because I've been here longer than some doesn't mean I'm wiser. It just means I've been here longer. So having a conventional sense of structuring like that helps to remove the other forms of comparisons. Once you've been in the life long enough, you realize you're always junior to somebody else, you're always senior to somebody else. And the whole self and other bit starts to, don't make anything out of it. Other people who are our heroes, people who are our villains. There's always someone we can get together and gossip about as being bad, or somebody we can venerate. And really other people are again what we proliferate around, what we perceive as skillful or unskillful. And what other people teach us is to just look, as if you keep creating other people, they start to live inside you. If you create other people, they live inside you. So you can spend your life with a whole lot of other people living inside you. People you're always arguing with. People you're always worrying about. Yeah? So your mind gets very crowded, full of all these people. They start talking to you after a while. Telling you what they think of you. And you're fighting with these people. Yeah? So our practice is how do we meet this world of apparent others without taking people in. And we just see, this is an unskillful Dhamma. That's a skillful Dhamma. This is a Dhamma that I respect and revere. This is a Dhamma that I don't respect. The people leave. The people leave your mind. And you know what you need to know, which is not who, but what is skillful and what's unskillful. And you see it around you. So other people can be our best teachers in many respects. In one respect, they show us skillful and unskillful Dhammas. And by and large, it's from other people that we learn to be human. You can learn many things from books. Book learning is highly praised, but the real learning you get from other people. Learning to be upright, learning to be patient, learning to be gentle, learning to be resolute. This you only get because you see other people doing it. Yeah. Other people then are an invaluable support. The Buddha said the Sappurisa, the real person of integrity, is an essential requirement for stream entry. So when you have someone, Luong Por Chah, even though his body has passed away, still you have the skillful Dhammas that you can still remember, pick up, talk about, give the anecdotes for, and then it stays with you. So in this respect, other people are a great teacher. And other people who annoy us, who disappoint us, who betray us, who seem unworthy, they're also great teachers, because they teach us that if we make their unskillful Dhammas into a person, their person will stay inside me forever. Quarrelling, disputing, causing me to feel angry and upset. So instead we say, that's just an unskillful Dhamma. May that person find their way out of that delusion. This is the appropriate response. So when we learn to live like this, we learn to live in a world of mixtures of good and bad, skillful, unskillful, villains, heroes, and we learn to live unperturbed steadied, clarified by that. And this really is the way that we gather ourselves into a Dhamma that is vast, universal, and unshakable. It's not something you put in a little box. It's not something you have for half an hour a day. It's not something you get after 10 years of focusing on a particular point. It's a Dhamma that's immediate, accessible here and now, and leads us onward. This is why I respect it so highly. These are the epithets of the Buddha's teaching. So I'll close this talk for the evening, and once again offer my respects to the Assembly for all your efforts and your practice, and I hope you know yourselves what efforts you've made that have been skillful for you, for your welfare, for the welfare of others, and if it's for both of our welfares, it will be that which clears away the defilements, the stress, the suffering, and will lead us to Nibbana. A1.
Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble Lord. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled.
We'll now close with the closing homage. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava
ปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามิ
And we pay respects to the senior monk this evening. Bow to Luong Por Chah. Yes. Pay respects to our teacher Luong Por Chah.
อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวะพุทธังภะคะวะตังอะภิวาเทมิสวากาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะมะยังบันเตติสารเรนะสหปัญจศีลานิยัจจมะดุติยัมปิมะยังบันเตติสารเรนะสหปัญจศีลานิยัจจมะตัตติยัมปิมะยังบันเตติสารเนนะสหปัญจศีลานิยัจจมะ
นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ
นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ
พุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิ
พุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิ
สังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิ
สังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ดุติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ดุติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ดุติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ดุติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ดุติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ดุติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ตัตติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ตัตติยัมปิพุทธังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ตัตติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ตัตติยัมปิธัมมังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ตัตติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ตัตติยัมปิสังฆังสรณังกัจฉามิ
ติสรณะกัมมานังนิติตัง
อัมมาบันเต
ปานาติปาทาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
ปานาติปาตาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
อาทินนาทานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
อาทินาดานาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
กาเมสุมิชฌาจาราเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
กาเมสุมิจฉาจาราเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
มุสาวาทาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
มุสาวาทาเวรมณีสิกขาปะทังสมาธิยามิ
สุระเมรยมาชปมาทธานาเ เวรมณีสิกขาบดังสมาธิยามิ
สุราเมรยามัจจาปมาดตานาเวรมณีสิกขาปดังสมาธิยามิ
อิมานิปัญจสิกขาบดานิสีเลนะสุขติยันติสีเลนะโภคสัมปทาสีเลนะนิพุติยันติตัสมาสีลังวิโสทะเย
สาธุสาธุสาธุนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิมานิมะยังบันติปัตตานิสัปปาริวารานิภิกขุสังฆัสสะโอโนจายามะสาธุโนบันติภิกขุสังโฆอิมานิปัตตานิสัปปาริวารานิปฏิกันหันตุอัมหากามจิกรตัมหิตายาสุขายา Venerable Sirs, we respectfully ask to offer to the Venerable Ones food for the meal together with these other requisites. May the Venerable Ones please accept this food and other requisites for the long-lasting benefit and happiness of us all.
เอวเมวะอิโตทินังเบทานังอุปกปติอิจิตังปฏิตังดุมหังคิปเมวะสมิจโตสัพเพปุเรนตุสังกปาจันโทปนรสโสยถามณิโชติรสโสยถา
สัพพิติโยวิวัจจันตุสัพพะโรโควินาศตุมาเตภวัตวันตรายโยสุขิตินายุโกภวะอาภิวาทนาสิริสานิจังวุฒาปัจจายโนจัตตารโอธัมมาวัฏันติอายุวันโนสุขังวาลังภวันตุสัพพมังคลังราคะตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพพุทธานุภาเวนะสัทธาโสติภวันตุเตภวตุสัพพมังคลังราคะตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพธัมมานุภาเวนะสัทธาโสติภวันตุเตภวันตุสัพพมังคลังราคะตุสัพพเทวตาสัพพสังฆานุภาเวนะสัทธาโสติภ
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. This is our second day of gathering in memory of Luong Por Chah. And yesterday, for me, it was a very, very beautiful day. I could say it was beautiful in the beginning, and beautiful in the middle, and beautiful in the end. So I'm feeling very grateful for this opportunity. In where Ajahn Kusalo and I live, we're on the northern limits of humanity in northern Canada, and it's quite cold. There aren't that many people there, so to be here with so many people of good faith, people of good heart who love the Dhamma, who are so generous, it's a great privilege indeed. I thought I'd just make some historical comment about this interesting painting of Luong Por Chah. You'll find that painting in many of the publications that have been given so freely and generously. And in that vein, I'd like to thank all the people who have worked on these publications, the compilers, the editors, the people who distributed the books, the sponsors, and so on. We received a significant number of these books in our monastery, and I've had the good fortune of distributing them at retreats and various Buddhist meetings, and people in Canada are profoundly grateful for the generosity they're receiving from here. So we are connected in this rather grand and beautiful way. And so gratitude is a very fitting theme for our weekend here. Back to this portrait. It looks like a photo. It's actually a pastel portrait. And I think in the back cover it's mentioned that the artist is Jerry Rollison. Jerry was, when Luong Por Sucitto and I and Ajahn Chah were in the Hampstead Vihara in London, Jerry was our first anagarika, our first kapiya, prototype kapiya. And Jerry was, as well as being a meditator and a good-hearted man, he was also a very, very skilled artist. When Ajahn Chah came to visit the Hampstead Buddhist Vihara in London, Jerry took 10 pictures of Ajahn Chah, and he showed me the 10 pictures, and he just clicked, click, 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 just 10 pictures. And he just showed me how Ajahn Chah's face would change over those 10 pictures, and it's like he just went very empty. But also, being an artist, he put one half, he blanked out one half of the picture, showed me on one half of his face looks this way, one half of the face looks that way. It was interesting how an artist perceives or sees in the photo. So he took that photo, and then in the next 2 years, between 1977 and 79, I think it's honest to say he was obsessed with this painting. He worked very, very diligently, and the impressive thing about his work that he really didn't do portraiture. His favored medium was glass. Very skilled man. So when Ajahn Chah was there in 77, just the way Ajahn Chah related to Jerry was very heartwarming. Now Jerry, like our tradition, we don't smoke cigarettes, but Jerry was a heavy smoker, so he'd slip off into the garden to get some cigarettes, and he tried to quit, but he became so erratic that it was decided he better not quit smoking, or life would be too difficult for all of us. So Jerry, he continued to smoke his cigarettes and somewhere in the background and so on. Now, so Ajahn Chah arrived, and Ajahn Chah had a way of being tremendously compassionate to the people who had complex problems, like Westerners, who were slightly neurotic maybe. And he had this tremendous way of drawing people in and relaxing them and making them feel loving about themselves, I suppose. So one day, we look out into the garden of the Hampstead Vihara, and there's Luong Por Chah smoking a cigarette with Jerry. Now, I'd heard that Luong Por Chah had smoked as